Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you, to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault in a warped and crooked generation. You will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. C.S. Lewis says, when a layman has to preach a sermon, I think he is most likely to be useful or even interesting if he starts exactly from where he is himself, not so much presuming to instruct as compare notes. So, exactly where I am myself in writing this talk was immediately before, during, and after the October break, when our 5-year-old was off primary school for 2 weeks. Our life has been a sort of glorious mess of things. Crazy golf, play dates, Peter Rabbit, football, swimming, and emotions. All the emotions. So many emotions. I even went to work from time to time. So that's the backdrop of me writing this talk. And it's been really good. But I couldn't help thinking from time to time that life might have been simpler if I hadn't committed to doing a talk. I'm meant to be writing a talk on working out my salvation with fear and trembling. But here I am, trying to be kind. I'm meant to be writing a talk about God working in me. But here I am, praying for strength. I'm meant to be writing a talk about not grumbling. But here I am. Of course I will take time for you. I'm meant to be writing a talk like shining like a star in the sky. But I need to give my wife a hug. I'm meant to be writing a talk about holding on to the word of life. But here I am playing with children on a play date. I'm meant to be writing about not running or laboring in vain. But here I am doing the dishes. I'm meant to be writing about being poured out on a sacrificial altar of service. But here I am exercising hospitality. I'm meant to be writing about being glad and rejoicing. But here I am, sitting in the car, in the dark, with a laptop that goes dead after 30 seconds, and I've forgotten the charger. So I just have to get out of the car and walk 100 yards over to the football pitch, where Struan's doing football practice, in the cold October night. And I love every second of it. And I am glad and I rejoice when he puts a ball in the back of the net. So, it has been a busy time. And it's hard work, working out our salvation, working out how to live this Christian life. In practical terms, even just with everyday normal work and family commitments. And I know, just as many of you do, that life is often a little bit like an endurance race. So, let's look at our first part of the verse. Therefore. Let's stop right there. Whenever you see the word therefore, you should always ask what it's there for, This particular therefore refers to the lines just before it. Now this goes to Philippians 2, verses 5 to 11. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Jesus Christ, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient, to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Yeah? What's all this about? Well, Christians believe this world is broken. Christians believe this existence that we find ourselves in as something desperately wrong with it. And the reason this world is fractured in this way is because humanity made catastrophic choices a long time ago. And we have to live with the consequences. And Christians believe that it's not just the world around us that's broken, that we are in fact broken, that we are part of the brokenness of this place, that we still make catastrophically bad choices, these sinful choices. And Christians believe humanity is inherently sinful, that it's our fallen state. I look at the news headlines for today or any other day, and even a look at our own lives will confirm this. Our brokenness, our sinfulness will confirm our inability to make good choices, right? Even when we try to do something good, either as groups or as individuals, we still make a mess of it. Whether it's political initiatives or with social initiatives or making a just war or even with just something simple like personal improvement. Christians also believe that the physical death and resurrection, that is, the physical death and raising back to life of a man hated by the religious people of his day, by the way, 2,000 years ago, can fix it. Has fixed it. And that if we accept this at an individual level, accept this truth, we can experience God. We can start to live our best life with all its fullness. And that we can become individually and with other Christians little outposts of heaven. And it's not just a promise for this broken world, but for better things in the world to come. Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Now, St. Paul does not say, therefore, you got it made. St. Paul does not say, therefore, believe in explosive blessings, my friends. St. Paul does not say, therefore, start calling yourself happy and prosperous. He does not say, therefore, you deserve everything you desire. He says, therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Fear of God is certainly a very complex subject. So complex, in fact, that just by discussing it here today, there is a very real possibility I could make it more complicated. And a lot of people don't like the fear and trembling part. These people will say, perhaps, rightly, that we shouldn't be scared of a being who truly loves us. Yeah? The Episcopal Church liturgy says there is no room for fear in love. But we have to balance that against what Jesus says. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. The word work is also problematic. Again, it's been widely debated. For me, I know how sinful I am. I know I don't have the capacity to work my way to God any more than I have the capacity to run an ultramarathon every day. In fact, one of the resources Dean shared with me was a link to 2 videos of the great author and theologian David Pawson talking on Philippians. Dean, our pastor, mentioned him last week and suggested we all watch Pawson's Philippians talks on the subject of how sinful we are. Pawson explains that. Paul says, when I consider my righteousness, now, he's very blunt. He says, I, that is St. Paul, feel like a child who's just emptied his bowels and is holding up the potty saying, look what I've done, God. St. Paul uses a pretty down-to-earth word in the Greek. In Anglo-Saxon, he says, it's shit to God. When I consider the things I've done, that's what it's like. Even what it is, it stinks, it's filthy, even my good deeds. Pawson says, that's why it's so difficult for good people to convert to Christianity. And that's why it's so much more obvious to people when they're more obviously sinful that they need to be saved from their sin, because it's so difficult for us to see even the good things we've done are filthy compared to the glory, the purity, the majesty of God. So, if St. Paul had just stopped at verse 12, we could all just give up. We could all just get lost in hedonism or Buddhism or whatever ism that we wanted, because there wouldn't be any point. Because we can't do it. But St. Paul doesn't stop there. He goes on. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Paul does not say, for if it is to be, it is up to you. Paul does not say, for the best place to find a helping hand is at the end of your own arm. St. Paul does not say, for the best things in life must come from effort, from within. He does not say, for you must pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps. But God works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. What a relief. So God is the one working in me to complete what he has begun, in order to fulfill his good purpose. But what's the only proof for Paul that God is in fact working within us to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose? That we're working out our salvation with fear and trembling. I wouldn't really care about my salvation unless God was at work in me. I wouldn't want to work it out with fear and trembling unless he was willing and acting in order to fulfill his good purpose. It's human and divine. It's freedom, but it's grace. It's not one or the other any more than it's which wing of the aeroplane does most of the flying. And that's what he's doing in us. So, We have to work out our salvation with fear and trembling, not because it's all up to us, but because the only way we can prove and confirm to ourselves that God is in fact working inside of me, willing and acting to fulfill his good purpose, is because I am getting up each day, admitting my weakness, praying to him for help, and working out my salvation with fear and trembling, knowing my capacity to sin, which is virtually unlimited, and knowing his love, his capacity to make me holy, which is unlimited, because his love is so great. How could I possibly love like that when I'm so proud and I'm so angry? But as soon as he tells us to be fearful and trembling, in the next words he gives us the consolation. For it is God who works in you. We're not doing it through our own strength. Verse 14 says, do everything without grumbling or arguing. And I think, did Paul have to say that? Do everything without grumbling or arguing. No grumbling, everybody. It's not just a suggestion, it's a command. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. The Anglican scholar N.T. Wright says this is a reference to the grumbling of the Israelites in the desert. So, Church Connect group leaders, all church leaders, whether you're on the AV team or the worship team or the kids work team or the welcome team, Dean, Jeanette and Gary, anyone who has responsibility, the next time someone's complaining, and I'm great at this, by the way, my personal grumbling is quite something. When I do it, I'm far from perfect, and I thank God for a loving church family who can forgive me and forgive each other, and thank God for Jackie who constantly tries to make me civilized. So, church leaders, the next time someone's complaining or grumbling, tell them. Say, do you know what God did in the Old Testament to the Israelites who were grumbling in the desert when they complained about the food? Right. Okay. No grumbling, all right? We need to be different. Christians should be different. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. The word arguing is also very interesting here. The word translated here as arguing is dialogismos. That word in Greek carries with it very negative connotations. Strong's Concordance says dialogismos is a reasoning, a calculation, a movement of thought, deliberation, plotting, back and forth reasoning. Reasoning that is self-based and is therefore confused, especially as it contributes to reinforcing others' discussion to remain in their initial prejudice. So dialogismos is not quite the same as just disagreeing. It's okay to disagree, okay? Dialogismos isn't just disagreeing amicably. We're allowed to disagree. We're just not allowed to have disagreements that are destructive. Like me, during lockdown. And I don't mind telling you, I think I rage quit my Connect group WhatsApp like twice. And I had to come back to the group admin like twice and say, I'm sorry, please can I come back into the group? So instead of having disagreements that don't get us anywhere, instead we should continue to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in us in order to will and to act and to fulfill his good purpose. Verses 15 and 16 say, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. Christianity is not just like some single-player console game where I'm on my own trying to beat everybody else, and I can get to the same level as St. Paul got to, and can I get there and get the sword of the Spirit like him and move up to the next level? No. We are the church, and we are in it together, corporately, not just individually. Working out our salvation or running the race might take the form of a small thing, a seemingly insignificant thing, like being kind and cheerful with someone whom we spend time with. Or it may take the form of a much bigger thing, like dying for Christ, like St. Paul did. He was literally executed. But you and I are not just alone running our own personal race. We can be seen against the backdrop of this warped and crooked world. We can be seen against the backdrop of this place of darkness. And not only that, but we can shine like stars. Again, verse 15 says, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky. The reason we can't see many stars nowadays, and it's been an ever-increasing problem for the last couple of 100 years, is because of light pollution. This has been going on since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So you've got to remember, the words shine among them like stars in the sky was addressed to people who could see thousands of stars every night. Shine among them like stars in the sky. So people can see us and say, I want to be just like them. What do they have? They show off the glory of God. So when people look at us, at our lives, at our work and family life, and they can see us working out our salvation with fear and trembling, and because it's God who works in us in order to will and to act, in order to fulfill His good purpose, they can see God did that. Those people shine so bright. I see a light in them. God did that. Those people are a work of beauty. And you can see God's glory when you look at them. You can see God when you look at them. When you look at the way they live their lives. Verse 17 says, but even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. Here Paul is using rather a graphic analogy to discuss the very real possibility that he will be executed by beheading for his beliefs. And as far as we know, this is what happened to him, yeah? Now, the analogy works as follows. St. Paul knew Jewish law fairly well. He knew from sections in Numbers and Exodus that after a priest would sacrifice a lamb or a ram or a bull, he would pour out wine as a drink offering. The amount offered would have varied depending on the sacrifice. When sacrificing a lamb, the sacrifice would have been a quarter of a hin. When sacrificing a bull, the offering would have been half a hin. In modern terms, that's 4 bottles of Shiraz for a bull. The metaphor becomes much more graphic and makes much more sense when we consider that in a beheading, the blood in St. Paul's body would have flowed out from the neck, like wine being poured out from a jug. So even under these circumstances, Paul tells us to be glad and to rejoice, not to grumble or argue, but to be glad and to rejoice. And suffering shouldn't be a surprise to us as Christians, yeah? So when the suffering comes, we have to reorient our thinking. And C.S. Lewis says in The Problem of Pain, but creatures are not thus separate from their Creator, nor can He, the Creator, misunderstand them. The place for which he designs them in his scheme of things is the place that they are made for. When they reach it, their place is fulfilled and their happiness is attained. A broken bone in the universe has been set. The anguish is over. When we want something to be other than the thing God wants it to be, we must be wanting what in fact will not make us happy. Those divine demands which sound to our ears most like those of a despot and least like those of a lover, in fact marshal us where we should want to go if we knew what we wanted. If there's something broken about me, which there is, if there's something broken about my world, which there is, if there's something broken about this place where I exist, and it's really, really plain for me to see, then perhaps I should consider this. Perhaps it is God who draws me to himself in a personal way. And he's trying to get my attention. Because he wants relationship with me. Because the further I am from my Creator, the further I am from my dad, the more broken I get. But why should separation from God lead to a broken people and a broken world? Now, this is the question you have to ask yourself. It's actually essential, not just for people who believe in God to kind of figure it out, but it's also essential if you're trying to tell anybody about Jesus. Or if you're watching this and you're kind of new to Christianity and you don't really believe it, or even if you are not new to Christianity and you're not sure if you believe it. Why should separation from God lead to a broken people and a broken world? How can being far away from God lead to pain? Or the more extreme version of the same question, how can being separated from God lead to death? And the answer to that question is because God is life. Yeah? Because there's no room for fear in love. It's the separation in which we find the fear and the brokenness and the pain and the death. So as we continue to work out our salvation with fear and trembling, remember that it's okay. And this relationship will take a bit of time. As all healthy relationships take a bit of time. But we are drawing closer to him. Because it's not us who works in us, but he who works in us in order to will and to act, in order to fulfill his good purpose. So, in conclusion, our lives are an endurance run sometimes. And the normal things, as much as the special things, are an endurance run sometimes. And that's where the battleground is. So may we all say, I'm meant to be working out my salvation with fear and trembling. So here I am, practicing kindness to others. I'm meant to have God working in me. So here I am, praying for strength. I'm meant to be not grumbling. So, of course, I have time for you. I'm going to become like a star that shines in the sky. So here I am, working with my church. On the AV team, or the worship team, or the kids' work team, or the welcome team, or doing tea and coffee. I'm meant to be holding on to the word of life. So here I am, a connect group with Christians. I'm meant to be not running or laboring in vain. So here I am, taking a break because I really need it. I am meant to be poured out on a sacrificial altar of service. So here I am, exercising hospitality. I'm meant to be glad. So here I am, being glad with the people I love, and I love every second of it. Amen.